Hola Mi Gente, we're back again on another episode of
Raices NYC. And on this episode, we have.
Brizzo Torres, singer, actor, and founder of the Good Good Collective.
and tell us a little bit more about yourself. What it is that you do, more about the collective.
Yeah. So I'm originally from San Anto. I moved here in 2011. I have been here in Bushwick since then. Bushwick has always been my home. As a creative, I always felt like my people were here. I see them, but even though I don't see them, you know what I'm saying? And so I decided in 2020, after everything that happened, obviously with the pandemic and with George Floyd, I was like, what am I doing for my community? I was always doing things like back to school events for the kids, always kids first. I always said, when I make it big and I have a record deal, I would come back and pour resources into the kiddos. But at that time, I was running a music school and for about a decade. And I'm like, I have the resources, my time. And so I decided that I was going to pull up and support one of the local schools here and teach them music because they were learning on YouTube during the pandemic. And I'm like, I think I could definitely do better than that. It was very impactful for the kids. I saw a lot of growth in that. And I decided, okay, well, how can I do a little bit more? And so slowly but surely, I started building the Good Good Collective.
You've done a great job at it. Also, but 2020, it's a time also where people were scared to go outside, and especially with kids too. Like, what was the process like in just like doing that and gaining people's trust to come?
Yeah. Well, luckily, from the school that I was running, I was working with after school programs. We created our own after school program. I've taken kids to Land Broadway, and we also served adults and seniors that were looking to build their skills in music, guitar, and singing. And so I already had street cred of working with kids in schools and here in New York. And so when I reached out to them, I was like, listen, anything that I can do to help via Zoom. So that's how we did everything, was virtual. Giving them high quality education via virtual. At that time, it was impactful because nobody was talking about how this was affecting our kids and what they were going through emotionally. For me, growing up, I have always embraced my culture as a Chicana, but there were still a lot of times where as I was growing up, I had to assimilate to whiteness. And so in the journey of me serving others and building community and circled around culture, I wanted to also pour into that and learn more about my culture. And so starting in the motherland, Mexico, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. But also, moving here too, from San Antonio and NYC, did you see a big difference, in the vibe and the people?
Yeah, absolutely. Like in San Anto, like I literally, my people were black and brown, my homies, right? And so when I came to New York, right, and I knew what I was getting myself into because that's why I wanted to move here. I wanted to learn about people and different cultures and stories as a creative, as an actor. That was important to me as well. It was a huge shock, but I knew what I was getting into, and it was awesome. I mean, I got to again right away collaborate with musicians, and for the music school, 99% of those musicians, the teaching artists, were musicians, active, touring across the world, playing for SNL, The Late Show, Broadway. Yeah. Like it was really legit. And so, as you know, in the music industry and especially in the genres based around rock and roll, is very much white dudes, right? And so, my first band, the Good Good,
Yeah.
was three white dudes, and they were my homies. And you know what? I love, shout out to Sky, Zilla, and Chase, but they helped me find my voice and helped me also create an environment where I felt safe to create. And I think that that's so important, not just as like Latina folks coming together, black and brown folks coming together, but all folks coming together, sharing culture, sharing the vibes, learning about each other's stories. That's why I moved here to New York. So I feel like I definitely lived a privileged life in that sense, you know, and I wanted to give back to the kids.
No, yes, and also what a like change though, going from a punk band now to having a collective. How is that? Like, how was that like too? It's such a you're literally like just changing whole different scenarios.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is that that was my first band, the Good Good Collective. I mean, the Good Good, my bad. And after that, working with the folks in the music school, I started a cumbia band with my homie Ivan, who is actually our vice president here for the Good Good Collective. La Huerta, which is very near and dear to my heart. So blending Mexican and Ecuadorian roots, very much like we were a party. And so I did that for some years after the Good Good. Yeah. Creating the Good Good Collective is my way to pay tribute to my OGs, so yeah.
But you had also mentioned that you went back to the motherland, and I guess in that way, that's how you were reconnecting back to your own culture, right? By going back to traveling to Mexico. How was that, and what were the other ways that you reconnected as well?
Yeah. So after the first program with a public school, teaching them via Zoom, right, during the pandemic, I was like, what's next? And so at that time, everybody was going to Mexico to go party, to get away from the pandemic, right? And it's like, folks. And much like New York City, Tulum is very much like supposed to be arts, culture, but very lively, and also a party town as well. And so I decided to go and visit and learn more about an organization that was there serving the local Mexican and Mayan kids. And so I took the trip. And again, I didn't want to come in with the idea of like, I'm gonna, save the day, but really see what their needs were. And that was also an opportunity for me to learn and embrace my culture and learn more, because with the space that we create here, yes, we're Mexican centered, but also we embrace all Latina, Black, and Indigenous cultures. And especially for Mexicans, embracing our Indigenous roots is so important to me. I think that was the main mission for me, is like, yes, I'm embracing my Mexican American roots as a Chicana, but more so on the journey of the Indigenous path, right? And learning more about that. And it's been beautiful. I still am learning and I still am growing, and I always say I'm going to be a student for life. I think as a creative, as an artist, you have to be almost a student for
Oh yeah,
life.
also you're dealing with children too. You're teaching. There must you have a lot of patience, and how's that like to like their learning experience on how to teach kids.
Yeah, well, I've definitely had, at that time when I started, nearly a decade of experience of working with kids. Our programs at the music school on the Upper East Side, we started at age 3 with a program called
Oh wow.
Suzuki.
Okay.
And an amazing program, and it's you can learn various instruments, but this was catered to guitar. And again, with educating, it's always about improving your skills and learning and growing, because as our children grow up, so does the world change, right?
Yeah.
And the needs are different. And so that is it's been quite a journey. And some educators get it, but I think I know what we create here is very special, because our educators, they want to be here. They are active. It's so important that our educators are also artist led. So they're active in their craft. They are pursuing, the NYC dream, and it just hits so much more because it radiates. It literally does radiate when you are teaching these kids when you are sharing your talents. And we've been so fortunate enough to have Elisa and Sam, who are highly vetted educators. You know, we take pride on having top-notch educators for our kids, and they deserve it. They deserve the best. There's been a lot of times where we have folks, oh, I know somebody that can come and like donate their time. They're kind of into crocheting, and it's like, I love that. Maybe they can come and like volunteer and meet the kids, but in the classrooms, we really want them to have the best experience. Again, I've taken kids to Land Broadway,
Yeah.
and we want that for them.
Yeah, so you want consistency, you know, you want them to want to be here and not just, you know, share a bit of time, just, you know, hey, like, you know, this is something like I want them to learn because you want to show that you love to teach them.
Yeah, it really is. And that's what it comes down to. I mean, folks think that here in New York that there are so many opportunities for arts and culture because people move here to learn, right? They come here to learn and to pursue the arts. But there are zero spaces for kids to nurture their creativity in the manner that we're doing here at GGC. These kids are getting top quality education, all the arts, music, theater, dance, visual arts, tuition free. In a world where they can learn about their culture, embrace the culture of their peers, which is so important.
We literally had a conversation about this the other day because when I was growing up, like I went to, I guess I can say now, a really well administrated school. And it was also a public school. They took us on amazing trips every year. They took us to the Met, the opera, to so many other things, and they always brought in teachers to teach like instruments, how to make like little instruments as well. And so even though I guess I didn't necessarily go into, you know, music and that wasn't my forte, I think it definitely opened up the world in my head as a child of like, oh, that's a possibility, I can do this, or at least just learn about it and be like, okay, I tried it and it didn't work out for me. And it's very important to have that as a kid because you know, you get to learn, right? And that's what it's all about. Like you said, it's always about learning. And there are schools, such as like the school that Julio went to, where they didn't have any of that. And so it really does make an impact in a child when they have these programs, when they're exposed to different teachers. It makes them like want to pursue these things as well, or like pursue anything because they're like, wow, well, they can do it, why can't I, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really wonderful in the way that you are opening your doors, especially tuition free, to, you know, New York City kids where they're very underprivileged. And, you know, as Julio said, like his school was not like that either.
Yeah, tell me, what was your school?
No, yeah, you know, always I feel like some schools, you know, they enforce other things instead of arts. You know, when they want to cut some programs, the first thing they do is art. And that's also an upcoming question that I would want to tell you too. Do you feel art is not appreciated as it should be, or is it now becoming more appreciated? People are saying that yes, we do need art and learning experience for the kids. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great question. I feel that from generations to generations, we've always embraced the arts, right? When it comes to TV, film, music, like everyone pulls up. Everybody wants to be entertained, right? But every generation, they just keep cutting the opportunities to keep making those very things happen. You know, during the pandemic, I held some conversations, gathering folks from LA. It was called Clubhouse, and it was a way for us to connect via these chats. I had folks that were in the music industry, that were directors, producers, and the same topic. Why isn't there any representation in TV, film, and media that showcases Latina folks? And at a certain point, it was like I was leading these chats, and it was just the same conversations over and over again. And it's like, you know what? That actually was just a little realization too around that time of creating this space, because it's not only for kids, it's for everyone. We host space here for adults. We recently had a mercado, and there was folks that were young and the OG generation that was like, thank you so much for this. Like I feel seen. I feel so proud of my culture. I'm learning about my culture. But going back to your question, it's like, we don't support the arts. Especially in our administration right now, education is being cut in the most devastating ways. And so for us, that's why it's so important that we create space for our kids, specifically Latin and Black and Indigenous kids, because right now they're navigating a ton of changes. Our kids are going through it right now, but we're not talking about it. Just like the pandemic, especially our immigrant families. And for our spaces, we primarily serve immigrant families. And so when you were talking about tuition free being so important, there's been folks that are like, maybe do a sliding scale, you know, anything, something, so that way you can keep your doors open. And it's absolutely not. I will never have a sliding scale. It will always be tuition free because our families are already juggling a billion barriers. They're working multiple jobs, single moms, and just by them showing up is a big barrier, right? Like transportation.
No, yeah, definitely too. And I feel like once you start putting a price on it, you start closing the door a little bit. Even though if it's a reasonable price, let's say it's like 5 or 10, still that's like you just adding like a little barriers, putting up like a door that's not really there. But again, too, it was a conversation I was having with Adi. As a kid, you know, now that you're older, you know, there's 3 days to go to the museum for everyone. But for me, you know, with my parents working all the time, or like, you know, I always told her like, I never went to a museum as a kid, you know, because I thought that was just a privilege, you know, for others. Like we didn't have like that privilege just because, you know, we didn't think like we would be able to afford to go there. But now that you're older, like, you know, it's public sometimes. There's 3 days and all of that too. So you start thinking, I'm like, growing up, you know, with immigrant parents, they're on a whole other world. You know, the zoo, the movies too, that was a luxury. And I'm just like, you just start realizing, you know, the things that their mindset was and the things that, you know, they were probably going through. So it's very great that the Good Collective, it's open for free tuitions, all of that too. Because again, most of these kids probably won't. This is the only stories that they're gonna have. Like I did this, or I went to these trips and all of that.
Yeah. And honestly, like I try not to think about it, but every day that we're here, it's I don't know if it's the last time I'm going to see my students. Obviously, what's happening with immigration, it's affecting them and their family. Parents are scared. Fathers are going back. We just want to bring them pockets of joy. And I like to believe that they will stay with us until the end of time, until their kids, you know, come aboard. But when I was a kid, I didn't have opportunities like this. I didn't have safer spaces. I unfortunately was a child that grew up in really heartbreaking environments and had to experience things that no child should ever have to experience. And I remember as a kid, there were these little programs that I would go into a month, maybe like 2 months at a, but I remember the educators. I remember how they made me feel. And that's how I fell in love with arts. I fell in love with music and theater. And I feel that even though I had those very little programs, I live a privileged life. I didn't graduate college. I'm a college dropout, but I managed early on in the Good Collective mission. We got awarded by this really sweet collaboration with Bad Bunny and Cheetos and PepsiCo, which was exciting. I got to tour and inspire kids in Hispanic serving institution, young college students, about pursuing the arts. For me, I didn't really have this realization until pandemic, till I was in my 30s. And I'd like for our kids, at least like Gen Z generation, to have these conversations now is already a win. And then our young kids coming in here with not knowing about their culture, to now we're about to complete almost our first after school program school year, right? And our kids are like, yeah, I'm Mexican and Ecuadorian. And they'll see things, oh yeah, I'm Mexican too, right? So every time they're engaging, and that's why it's so important that we want folks like you to come and inspire the kids, because if they see themselves out there, they will feel inspired, and that's our mission too. It's considered a non-negotiable. Like, in order to collaborate with us, like, just come see the kids, inspire the kids, and tell them about your story, right? Stories are so important on how we keep culture alive and how we inspire. One small moment, again, can really make a big difference in our children's lives.
That's literally why we started Raices, and I'm pretty sure that's also why we started. Julio's had started Con Tiempo in the first place. But it all goes back to, like, we never saw any representation in mass media. I think Julio can definitely say the same.
No, yeah, yeah. When building Con Tiempo as well, growing up in Washington Heights, being Mexican wasn't really, a glorified thing. We were always put at the lowest of the lowest. But I wanted to show that, someone like me could make it, inspire others. As a kid, I never had someone I could ride beside my mother. And so I was just like, I want to make a change for that. I want to say that, when they see me and they're like, if you could do it, I could do it too. And just to show that anything is possible, but it's hard work, patience, and it's time. And I feel like that's what you're also showing. You're making a safe space. You're showing these kids that art is beautiful, and to showcase, like, to craft their talent. I one thing that I dislike, I don't know, is when they say, when you're an artist or you're trying to do this as a hobby. It's not.
Oh, no.
It's it's not. Because the more Ari and me have, talked to other artists, have great friends too that are artists, are like, this is not a hobby. This is your career. This is something you love. This is a passion.
1000%. And again, same experience for me. Like, I was in theater and music within the programs in elementary school, middle, and high school. But when it was time to pursue it in college, I had an opportunity to go to Berkeley. My mom was like, why? There's no career in the arts. And I'm like, but this is all I've ever known, And so I ended up going into nursing, but I was just making the grade so I could stay in the productions, the theater production. I've worked with hundreds of artists from here in New York and in San Anto, and I can't begin to tell you how many times we've had conversations with companies that are, multi-million, sometimes multi-billion. It's like, we'll pay you in exposure. And I'm like, absolutely not. There's a lot of time. Point blank period.
There's
time.
effort.
There's time that's invested, right? You clock into freaking Burger King. It's like, there's time that's invested. It's work, And so, yeah, it's so important for me to also advocate as artists. It's so important that we advocate for artist equity, right? Because if we're not gonna speak out about these things, then who is?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And, going back to what you said in the beginning of your mom, not supporting your dream of going into the arts, I think us as, like, the newer generation, we're seeing that as, like, a learning lesson, where it's like, when we do decide to have kids, or if we are around kids, always try to, like, uplift them, right? Because you say, oh, like, that's just a hobby, or pa qué haces eso, mijo? Like, no. Like, we do get those comments growing up, and our parents, as we like to say, Mexican parents are our biggest haters. Shout out to Drazy. It's like, okay, we had that when we were young, where our parents were like, oh, it's just a hobby, like, do it when you have free time. Now we're changing that narrative, where it's like, no, like, you guys can pursue it all at the same time too, and it's not just a hobby. And so I think that's just something that we definitely do have to change as a community, and even in our Mexican households.
1000%. Yes, Mexican parents can be our biggest haters and supporters at the same time. How is that possible?
True.
It's like, here's the thing. We say we want better. I'm not a parent, but parents say they want better for their kids. They want them to go out there and just crush it in the world. But do we really? Because every generation, and I say this all the time, every generation is always pointing fingers. Like back in my day, you know, it was so much harder. You guys have it so easy. Y'all are, you know, a menace to society. It's just all of this negative talk. And it's like, wait a minute, you're the one that's raising these kids. Like, step up and really, if you really want better for these kids, make it easier for them. Educate them, create these opportunities, support them. You know, I think that's something that I'd like to believe that it is changing, because I am seeing the change with Gen Z, because like Gen Z world, and I don't care what millennials say, because I am active in the community working with folks, like they are very vocal. They are speaking up and pulling up and want better for the younger generation, you know? It's one of those things where at a certain point, we just got to stop talking and start taking action. I do have grace for our Mexican families, our parents, because a lot of them, again, struggling, single moms, working 2 jobs, going to spaces to learn about your history, your culture, you know, it's like not important. What was important is putting food on the table and making sure you had, you know, a safe space to an environment, right? Again, it's like the paradoxical kind of way. It's like, yes, parents can be very supportive, but they can also really just tear you down at the same time.
Especially our immigrant families, like they grew up in such a different world. What we can do as a second generation, third generation is always improve, right? Because you can always improve, always be better, always look back and see what you can do better for the next generation. But I did have a quick question. You do have so many programs. How can families find out about these programs? How can they bring their kids here?
Yeah, I mean, so I always just send out our numbers. So send out, like, literally, you can find us, DM us, give us a text good school, and we will definitely put you on the list and let you know of all the programs that we have. Right now, our biggest program is Bushwick School of the Arts. That's a space that we are creating for our kids, but we also have an adult program where we're holding space and teaching huepa cumbia classes, dance, modern. We're teaching guitar class, and that is a way for us to keep our program for our kids tuition free. But yeah, this summer we plan on having 3 sessions of summer camp, music, theater, dance with the kiddos, and it's gonna be awesome. We're also producing our first musical here with a professional theater company. It's a musical that I wrote based on ancient Maya history, which is again in response to the lack of visibility in Tulum and how it's very gentrified and not enough arts and culture. But we're bringing it to New York for the first time.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible.
Yeah, so we're excited about that.
Just so in Spanish, entonces si quieren traer sus hijos aquí a Good Good Collective para aprender de los artes, de diferentes programas que tienen, pueden llamar aquí or DM here. I'll put the link.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna enter into one of our segments, spooky story time.
Spooky
Or
story
paranormal
time.
activity.
For those that know me, know that I am into the spooky and the scaries, okay? But when I was taking a trip from San Anto to Florida with my cousin and her husband and my boyfriend at the time, it was like 2 days on the road. I want to start by saying my boyfriend at the time, he didn't believe in ghosts, didn't believe in UFOs, didn't believe in paranormal, none of that. We're driving into Louisiana, and it was probably about like 1 a.m., right? And it was a little bit rainy too. So I was like, you know what? I'm in the back seat with my cousin. I'm gonna take a nap, because we're like really just trying to like stay alert for the guys in the front. And my boyfriend was driving at the time. And so I'm, taking a nap, and my cousin is as well. All of a sudden,
Hola Mi Gente! Please subscribe to our Raices Patreon.
You'll get exclusive content from our interviews.
Thank you.
She'll do that when we're just in private.